In Britain, dropping a single crisp packet on the pavement can legally cost you up to £2,500. Not a warning, not a slap on the wrist. A fine that size, for one piece of litter, dropped in under 2 seconds. Here's why that's actually the law. The Environmental Protection Act 1990 made littering a criminal offence across England, Wales, and Scotland. Not a minor nuisance, an actual prosecutable crime, sitting in the same legal category as offences far more serious than a dropped wrapper. The maximum penalty through the courts was set at £2,500, designed as a genuine deterrent, not a token slap on the wrist fee that people could simply shrug off. Here's the part that surprises people. Most enforcement never even reaches a courtroom. Local councils can issue on-the-spot fixed penalty notices instead, typically £150 to £500, which means council wardens, armed with nothing but a clipboard, a camera, and legal authority, can fine you on the street the moment they see you drop something. No judge, no trial, just a piece of paper and a demand for payment within 14 days. And it's not hypothetical. Councils across Britain have issued fines for cigarette butts, apple cores, even a single sweet wrapper, sometimes using hidden cameras specifically positioned to catch litterers in the act, tucked into lampposts or disguised as ordinary street furniture. One warden in a well-documented case fined a man not for the cigarette butt itself, but for flicking the ash onto the pavement. The ash, not the object. The residue of the object. Try imagining that. Getting an official government fine for ash falling from your hand. Not littering a physical item, technically dispersing particulate matter in a public space. That's the level of precision British enforcement has reached. This law is still fully active today. Decades after it was written, the £2,500 maximum has never been repealed, and if anything, councils have expanded enforcement in recent years, deploying more cameras, more wardens, and in some areas, private enforcement companies paid a commission for every fine they issue, which means, in certain towns, there's now a direct financial incentive for a stranger to watch you drop something. So a single crisp packet, dropped without a second thought outside a corner shop, technically carries the same legal weight as a serious civil offense, enforceable by a person you've never met, who may be financially rewarded for catching you. But litter turned out to be one of the milder things British law decided to regulate on the street. Because in London, there's a rule about carpets that sounds like it belongs in a comedy sketch, except it's completely, currently, legally real. Under the Metropolitan Police Act 1839, it is still technically illegal to beat or shake a carpet, rug, or mat in a London street. Read that again. Beating a carpet outside your own front door, the exact everyday task generations of Londoners performed for over a century before vacuum cleaners existed, was written directly into criminal law. Not discouraged, not frowned upon. Criminalized. The reasoning wasn't random, and it wasn't overreach for its own sake. In the 1830s, London streets were narrow, crowded, and constantly thick with dust, horse traffic, and pedestrians moving in every direction. A carpet beaten from an upstairs window sent thick clouds of grime straight down into the street below, into passing carriages, into open shop fronts, into the faces of people simply trying to walk to work. Parliament decided that was enough of a genuine public nuisance to legislate against it directly, alongside far more serious offences in the same act. But here's the twist that makes this one genuinely bizarre, and the kind of detail that makes you wonder who exactly negotiated it. The law includes a specific deliberate exception carved out for doormats. You are legally permitted to beat a doormat in a London street, but only before 8 o'clock in the morning. Not carpets, not rugs, not runners or mats of any other kind. Just doormats. Just before 8 a.m. nothing else qualifies. And the law is precise enough that it clearly wasn't an oversight. Someone, in 1839, sat down and decided doormats deserved a carve out that carpets did not. Nobody has been formally prosecuted for this in living memory, as far as public records show, but the statute itself was never repealed. which means, technically, shaking out a rug on your own front step in London, today still puts you on the wrong side of an actual enforceable criminal law, one written before photography existed, before the telephone was invented, before electric streetlights replaced gas lamps. Try explaining that one to a police officer hypothetically. I didn't realize my rug was breaking a statute older than the light bulb. It sounds like a joke. It is not. Littering has modern, active enforcement, cameras, wardens, real fines issued weekly. This one just sits there, ancient, and mostly forgotten, technically loaded, waiting for exactly the wrong Tuesday morning, and exactly the wrong officer in an unusually strict mood. And once you understand that Parliament regulated carpets with this level of specificity, the next law starts to make a strange kind of sense, because they regulated dogs with exactly the same precision. Just a century and a half later, failing to clean up after your dog in public in Britain can result in a fixed penalty notice of up to £100 on the spot, rising to £1,000 if the case goes to court and a magistrate gets involved. This one has real teeth, real enforcement infrastructure, and real documented stories behind it. Under the Clean Neighborhoods and Environment Act 2005, dog fouling became its own specific, targeted offense, not lumped in with general litter, but carved out into its own category, with its own fine structure, and its own enforcement teams in many councils. Councils take it seriously enough that several have used covert surveillance, hidden cameras positioned near popular dog walking routes and parks, specifically to catch owners who walk away without cleaning up after their pets. One council in South Wales was publicly reported using exactly this method, quietly filming a stretch of park for weeks, and issuing fines to owners who had absolutely no idea they were being recorded the entire time. Here's the detail that makes it stranger, and genuinely catches people off guard. You can be fined, even if you didn't personally witness your dog do it. Wardens have legal discretion to issue notices based on reasonable belief rather than direct observation, which means a dog owner distracted by a phone call, looking the other way, unaware their dog fouled behind them seconds earlier, can still legally receive a fine. No video needed, no confession required, just a warden's reasonable judgment. Some councils have gone even further, requiring owners to carry visible proof they have waste bags on them at all times, regardless of whether their dog actually needs to go during that particular walk. No bag on you, no proof of intent to clean up, and in some jurisdictions, that alone has been enough grounds for a fine, even with no incident having occurred at all that day. Think about that for a second. A fine for something your dog never even did, based purely on the absence of a plastic bag in your pocket. A carpet law from 1839, waiting quietly for the wrong morning. A litter law with fines issued over cigarette ash. And now a fine you can receive without your dog committing any offense whatsoever, simply for being unprepared. But the strangest street law in Britain isn't about mess, cleanliness, or hygiene at all. It's about kites. Under that same 1839 Act, the one that gave the world the doormat exception, it is illegal to fly a kite in a London street, in a way that annoys anyone passing by. Not dangerous, not reckless, not even disruptive to traffic. Annoying. That is the actual legal standard, written into a statute still technically in force, nearly 2 centuries later. The law was written for a very real 19th century problem. London streets were, in a very real sense, the public playground of the era. Children and adults alike used them for games, since dedicated public parks and playgrounds were far scarcer than they are today. Kites, hoops, and other street games regularly startled horses, tangled with passing carriages, and caused genuine, sometimes dangerous chaos on crowded roads, shared by pedestrians. Pedestrians and animals alike. Parliament didn't ban kite flying outright, though. Instead, it banned kite flying to the annoyance of others, a deliberately vague standard that handed enormous discretion directly to the police officer standing on the street. Here's where it gets genuinely strange, and reveals something about how these laws were actually assembled. The exact same section of the statute also criminalizes sliding on ice or snow in the street, if it endangers passers-by. Kites and ice, sliding, written into the same sentence. Treated by Parliament as the same basic category of public nuisance. One law for two completely unrelated childhood activities, bundled together because they happen to cause similar problems on the same crowded streets. Picture a Victorian police constable, notebook in hand, formally citing a child for annoying kite, flying on a busy afternoon. This wasn't theoretical or symbolic. It was enforceable law, applied by real officers, against real people, on real London streets, with a real penalty attached. The statute has never been repealed, which means, technically, flying a kite badly enough to genuinely irritate a stranger on a modern London street today, tangling their hair, blocking their path, startling them, still falls under a live 19th century criminal law that predates the bicycle, the telephone, and powered flight itself. A carpet ban with a doormat loophole. A dog fouling fine you can receive without your dog doing anything wrong. Litter fines that reach £2,500 for a single wrapper. And now, kite flying regulated by the exact same legal clause as sliding on ice. But the final law on this list is the one that quietly ties every single street rule together. Because it comes from the exact same statute, written to control something even smaller and more mundane than a kite. That same 1839 Act also makes it an offense to knock on someone's door and run away. It's technically classified as a form of nuisance, willfully and wantonly disturbing a household, and it sits in the exact same statute as the carpet law, the kite law, and the ice sliding law. One single piece of legislation, written for a crowded, chaotic Victorian city, quietly criminalizing an entire childhood prank that almost every British kid, in almost every generation since, has played at least once without a second thought. None of this was ever formally repealed. It was simply outpaced by time, written for a world of horses, carriages, gas lamps, and dusty unpaved streets, and it just kept sitting there on the statute books, technically valid, in a country that now has none of those things left. That's the real thread connecting all five of these laws: littering, carpet, beating, dog fouling, kite, flying, and door knocking pranks. Each one solved a genuine specific problem for a specific moment, in a specific, rapidly changing city. None of them were ever properly cleaned up afterward. They just stayed exactly as written, word for word, quietly waiting for someone to notice. Britain didn't deliberately set out to criminalize crisp packets, doormats, and childhood games played by generations of kids who never once thought about the law. It just never got around to updating the paperwork, and in a legal system built on centuries of accumulated statutes, never got around to, it can mean a rule stays technically enforceable for 100, 200, even 300 years after the exact problem it was written for has completely disappeared. Which of these five would get you fined today? Tell me in the comments.